Next speaker will be Honourable Farage, EFDR. 2 minutes.
Amongst the long list of foreign policy failures and contradictions in the last few years, including of course the bombing of Libya, the desire to arm the rebels in Syria, has been the unnecessary provocation of Vladimir Putin. This EU empire, ever seeking to expand, stated its territorial claim on the Ukraine some years ago. Just to make that worse, of course, some NATO members said they too would like the Ukraine to join NATO. We directly encouraged the uprising in the Ukraine that led to the toppling of the President Yanukovych, and that led, of course, in turn to Vladimir Putin reacting. And the moral of the story is, if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised when he reacts. Now, just to continue with that, today we are rushing through an association agreement at undue speed with the Ukraine, and as we speak there are NATO soldiers engaged in military exercises in the Ukraine. Have we taken leave of our senses? Do we actually want to have a war with Putin? Because if we do, we are certainly going about it the right way. Perhaps we ought to recognise that the West now faces the biggest threat and crisis to our way of life that we have seen for over 70 years. The recent beheadings of the British and American hostages graphically illustrates the problem. And of course we have our own citizens from our own countries engaged in that struggle too. In the war against Islamic extremism, Vladimir Putin, whatever we may think of him as a human being, is actually on our side. I suggest we grow up. I suggest we recognise the real threat facing all of our countries, communities and societies. We stop playing war games in the Ukraine and we start to prepare a plan to help countries like Syria, like Iraq, like Kenya, like indeed Nigeria, to try and help them to deal with the real threat that faces us. Let's not go on provoking Putin, whether we like him or not.
Kiitoksia.
Thank you. Mr. Farage.
Did a blue card question, actually a few blue card questions. The first one of these was by Mr. Pascu. Do you accept this blue card? Mr. Pascu, 30 seconds please.
Sir, in your considerate opinion, what is better, to have Russian soldiers fighting a war on the territory of Ukraine or NATO troops exercising as a response to that on the territory of Ukraine?
Mr. Farage, 30 seconds please.
I think, sir, the point that I was making is that there should be a huge degree of guilt in this House about what provoked all of this in the first place, and we saw Western Ukrainians waving European flags, rioting, setting fire to things and effectively staging a coup d'etat which brought down the Ukrainian president, which has led to this instability. Yes, you are the guilty people and you refuse to accept it.
Hello, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Tilly Chang. I'm with the San Francisco County Transportation Authority.
Okay. And what's going on today?
Today we're having an outreach meeting to engage the San Francisco community in what's known as Plan Bay Area,
right.
Our region's long-range land use and transportation plan for a more sustainable region.
Right. So, you said sustainable region. What does that mean, sustainable region?
Yeah, I think it means lots of things to different people, but generally we refer to that as how are we going to ensure that we have an equitable and an environmentally sound approach to our growth, that we include all members of the community in decision making, and that we grow in a pattern that respects our environment and helps ensure that we have an effective approach to climate change.
Okay. So would sustainable development mean like using less resources?
I think it's that. It's also ensuring that we give people good options for how to move about, so that they don't have to rely on private vehicles, which are an expensive way to move around, and it's also somewhat harmful, impactful to the environment. So if we can give people better options for where to live and how to move around, that would be what we're trying to do.
Back to the resources, you just said that the idea of sustainable development would be using less resources. But wouldn't that be a form of rationing?
A form of
Form of rationing?
rationing. No, I think it's being more efficient in your footprint, both in your natural resource footprint and in your cost effectiveness of providing for community development.
So it's conserving energy, conserving water,
Land, and the cost of providing for services when we have sprawl, I think is much greater than if we have a more efficient land use pattern. Now, that doesn't mean everyone needs to live in high density cities. It doesn't mean that everyone has to live in the same way.
Right.
But I think that there is so much demand for that we are not able to keep up. And
Is there there's a demand for what exactly is there
I think
demand
there's
for?
a demand for, I guess, what we would say is sort of a more efficient and effective sort of community setting. So where you have easy access to jobs, easy access to your services, your neighbors, your friends, and not having to travel long distances or spend a lot of money to live in an efficient way.
Okay, so you're going to so maybe the idea is to work where you live? Kind of? Yeah, right.
Yeah, and giving people more options to do so. There's so much demand for housing, and we're not keeping pace on providing that housing in the inner part of the Bay Area. And so people have had to trade off housing for lower cost housing in the outer fringe, but that creates more transportation impact.
Okay, and these high density houses, you say there's a demand for that?
I think there's a greater demand from young and old alike, where we're seeing certainly young folks, but also folks who are wanting to age in place and not have to move out to the outer areas as they age. They want to be close to services, close to their families, and to be able to stay, where they've had long-time community ties. But not only the older folks, but their kids are having a hard time staying in their communities.
Okay. Do you live in one of them stack and pack apartments?
No, I live in San Francisco on the west side, in a house.
You have a nice house?
Yeah, we rent a house. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
We rent a house.
Yeah.
And so we're fortunate that we can do that, I think, and we live right on transit. But a lot of people, who want to be here or want to stay here aren't able to do so.
Right.
It's very expensive to live here, and we want to try to address that through smarter planning.
Right. Now, in my understanding, the American dream, what I used to remember about the American dream was a car and having a single family home and a back garden and having your children play there.
Yeah.
But if the model is high density housing, isn't that taking away from that idea of?
I think many people want more options than that, right? So that was and that still remains the built environment that we have in many places, where we created that in the 50s. So, but I think more people want to have more choices. So you don't want it to be car dependent. And right now we have a lot of folks who are isolated and who are dependent and have only automobile choices.
How is getting people off cars giving them more choices?
Well, it's not getting them off cars. People use cars, but they might sometimes be willing and prefer to have a transit option. They might want to be able to bike to their local market. They want to take walks and feel safe walking and not having to contend with enormous.
How is it safer if you have to take say if you have to get BART from Oakland to San Francisco? You have to sit and wait for BART, and you meet all sorts of drug addicts and all sorts of crazy people. So I don't know how it's.
But you face that walking around anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
So I think what you have is a more reliable ride. It's an affordable ride.
Is it more reliable
It might be
than a
faster.
car?
Yeah, because you have to face traffic congestion.
But
for that reason, BART is packed. The Transbay Terminal is packed to the gills. We can't. People are not able to get on BART.
But when I'm on my car, I know that I can lock my doors and go wherever I want in privacy.
Yeah.
But when I'm in BART, I'm at the mercy of anyone So how is that?
But our community, I mean, I think BART is a safe system, and I reject the notion that it's so scary to take BART.
It is quite scary. Yeah, there's a lot of like if you've walked around San Francisco, there's a lot of homeless and violent people.
Well, I don't think that there's that much violence on our transit system. I think it's a pretty safe system, but we'll have to disagree. But I think when you're in your car, you're in your car, yeah, but it's a very expensive form of transportation. Not everyone has access to it. It's rather inequitable that, we have some people who are car dependent and can't afford it. But you're also sitting in traffic. So the other option is, maybe if we could create carpool lanes and you could get more people in your private vehicle, that's a nice compromise because it's not quite transit, but it's also not a solo car.
But your arguments aren't really coming through because you said it's more efficient to use public transportation when it's fact that using your private car is at least twice as fast as using public transportation. So I don't know how and over 90% of people are still driving. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true in the Bay Area. I give you that. But in San Francisco, we're definitely seeing in some corridors, it makes no sense to drive. You would rather take Muni, you'd rather take a bus or BART because you're going to be stuck in traffic and you're unreliable. You're going downtown. You'd rather be in the tunnel than driving.
Well, maybe the reason that it's so congested in San Francisco is because there's bike lanes everywhere. And if you don't, have you got like numbers, the amount of people who are actually cycling in the bike lanes, or what is it? Do the numbers add up? How
they do in some corridors? They really do. They have more people coming down Market Street than driving. In the mornings.
Is it?
Yeah, but that's just Market Street. So I grant you that it's not most streets. But there are certain places, especially coming downtown, where people are choosing transit or biking because it's a quicker, more reliable ride, and it's becoming even safer because we're creating dedicated bike lanes.
I see that a lot.
Yeah, and so I think bike share is coming, and it's a nice way to kind of get that last mile.
What's bike share?
Bike share is a way to have access to a bike trip on a one-way basis that doesn't require you to rent a whole bike and return it back to where you started, and it's just a quick ride under 30 minutes, and it's meant to be the last mile connection to whatever your destination is from transit.
My translation to that is your plan for people to be so poor that they can't even afford their own bike, that they have to share a bike.
Oh, no. I think it's for people who don't want to have to carry their bike around and have to, they just want a one-way ride. They don't want to have to store it and then ride it back, and then you have to carry it on your Caltrain or your BART and take up that valuable space in the mainline trunk line transit. This way you don't have to carry your bike around, you have access to a bike.
Right, and I've been hearing talk about a vehicle mileage tax.
Right, the state of California is doing a road user charge, similar to what Oregon and Washington have tried to do, and it's because the gas tax is fundamentally becoming less fair as more and more electric vehicles are coming online, which is a good thing, but they don't pay gas tax, and therefore they're not paying for the road damage they're causing to reinvest in our infrastructure.
Less fair to who?
Less fair to others who are paying the gas tax, and oftentimes the people with the electric vehicles are more affluent, you can buy an electric vehicle, and so those people are not paying the fair share of their road damage.
So how does a VMT increase the fairness?
Because everybody would pay it whether you're in an electric vehicle or not.
Right, and how do they plan on tracking everybody's mile?
Yeah, so there is my understanding is California's looking at how Oregon did it, and there's 4 ways to do it. There's 2 or 3 electronic ways, and then there's one that's just you bring it in and you get the mileage checked as you do when you do a smog or some kind of a manual.
What about the electronic way? Now that's a touchy subject regarding privacy.
Sure it is. And so the idea is to give people choices so that you don't have to do the electronic version. But there's also ways that the government doesn't run it, and you can choose your private provider for issuing the little electronic GPS device. And so you're paying for a telephone company, or you're paying somebody else who's administering the program, and the government does not have your data.
So they wouldn't wouldn't pass information.
Right.
But now for me, I don't trust the government a lot. And if you just seen recently, like the last year or two, Edward Snowden's documents that he released saying that all these telecommunication companies like Verizon sharing information with the government and Google. So how would we know how can we trust these companies not to be given the information to?
I mean, you just saw Apple stand up to the government, so I think it's up to it's a question, it's a fair question, but I think that what we do, for example, what London did when they did a congestion charge, once that charge is paid, they just deleted the record. There's no need to keep the record once the charge has been paid. So you don't, it's paid the next day, it's deleted. You don't need to keep a record.
But so the public have to just trust you with our data?
I think there should be regulations, and there should be standards, and there should be reporting. But I think we already trust the government and private sector with our cell phone data. It's not much different.
Maybe you trust the government, but I don't trust the government.
All right.
Here, no,
Thank you for your time.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
Now, I've heard about intelligent transportation system. What's that?
So that's the use of technology to help provide user information and to provide operators a more efficient way to operate their networks, whether it's the freeway or the transit system. But it's basically using transportation to provide real-time information.
How would they track, or how would they be receiving information? How would they?
You have to opt in, and you can take advantage of these things that are already in your cell phone or they're already in the car. And so you would turn it on. And you'd say, I am willing to, be in communication with other systems,
right.
And that could be the roadside, it could be other vehicles.
Right.
So ITS says, okay, maybe I care about, being in communication with other cars so that we can just not bump into each other. And that's the idea of having detection systems with vehicle to vehicle. And then now there's also vehicle to infrastructure, where it says, oh yeah, I'd like to know if there's a construction or a site or a traffic collision up ahead, and I want to be diverted. And so ITS will tell me, hey, you might want to take this exit and avoid this upcoming collision.
Right. Would there be any license plate reading technology?
There already is. There already is on the toll bridges. There's already, all around the world in a lot of big cities, they already have this technology.
Here, I have one more thing. I had since everyone are handing out documents, right? I've got something for you. Hold on.
All right.
Here. What does that say?
It's the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
All right. Take care now.
See you later.